The impossible window. Dr. Ethan Carter had always believed in logic, numbers, equations, and science. These were the things that made sense to him. The universe followed rules, and his job as a physicist was to understand them. But on that particular evening, something happened that broke all the rules. It started with a small flicker, just a tiny, shimmering distortion in the air inside the laboratory. At first, Ethan thought it was just a trick of the light, maybe a reflection from the monitors. But then, the distortion grew. "Are you seeing this?" whispered Dr. Anna Patel, Ethan's colleague, and one of the leading researchers at the Horizon Research Facility. Ethan stepped closer. The air in front of them rippled like water in a pond. But there was no water, no glass, nothing. Just empty space, bending. "Check the readings," Ethan said, his voice tight. Anna rushed to her console. The energy levels were spiking. Whatever this was, it wasn't a normal fluctuation. Something was happening, something their equipment had never recorded before. The distortion widened. A crack appeared in the air itself, as if the universe had been torn apart. And then, before anyone could react, it opened. The portal. A perfectly round, glowing window had formed right in the middle of the lab. Ethan felt his breath catch. It was impossible. No experiment they had been working on could explain this. But the most shocking thing wasn't the portal itself. It was what lay beyond it. The other side. Through the glowing frame, they could see a city. But it was not their city. Ethan stepped forward cautiously. The view through the portal showed towering skyscrapers, sleek and shining, stretching into a deep purple sky. Strange floating vehicles moved between the buildings, gliding smoothly without any visible engines. The architecture was familiar, yet different. Anna gasped. "That looks like Earth," Ethan finished for her, "but not our Earth." There was no doubt about it. The buildings had signs in English. The roads were structured like modern cities. People, humans, walked the streets. And yet, something was off. Ethan's fingers twitched with nervous energy. His mind raced with questions. Was this some kind of advanced hologram? A wormhole? A rift in time? He turned back to the team. "We need to send a probe." Anna nodded quickly. They had several small drones designed for external environment scanning. Within minutes, a lightweight camera drone was ready to fly through the portal. Ethan controlled the joystick, guiding the drone forward. It passed through the portal smoothly. No resistance, no visible force field. It was as if the portal wasn't even there. The drone's camera feed flickered on the monitor. Now they were seeing the other side up close. The city was alive. People were walking, talking, laughing, just like any normal place on Earth. But their clothes were different, sleek, futuristic, embedded with glowing patterns. Some wore metallic bands on their wrists, which seemed to be interactive devices. Then the drone turned a corner, and suddenly everything changed. They were watching. A figure appeared on the screen. A man stood staring directly into the drone's camera. Ethan's heart skipped a beat. The man was tall, dressed in a dark uniform with silver markings on his shoulders. His eyes were cold, calculating. But the strangest part, he looked exactly like Ethan. The lab fell silent. No one spoke. The other Ethan tilted his head slightly, as if analyzing the drone. Then he lifted his hand and tapped his wristband. A red light flashed. The screen glitched. Ethan's eyes widened. "Shut it down." Anna tried to recall the drone, but it was too late. The camera feed cut to static. The drone was gone. Ethan's pulse pounded in his ears. The air in the lab felt thick, heavy. He could still see the portal, still see the city through it. But now it didn't feel like an opportunity. It felt like a warning. Someone, or something, was watching them. And whoever they were, they knew. First contact with the unknown. The lab was silent. Too silent. Dr. Ethan Carter could still see the portal standing in front of him, glowing softly, showing the city that shouldn't exist. A city that looked like Earth, but wasn't. A city where a man who looked exactly like him had just shut down their drone with a single touch. Anna Patel swallowed hard. That wasn't just some random person, Ethan. That was you. Ethan didn't respond. His mind was racing. His hands clenched into fists. Every logical part of his brain screamed that this was impossible. A parallel Earth. Another version of himself. And yet, the proof was right there. The monitors beeped loudly, breaking the silence. Anna glanced at the readings. Energy levels are stable. The portal isn't closing. Ethan exhaled. Good. That means we can still send something through. Anna looked at him in shock. You can't be serious. That guy just shut down our drone like it was a toy. What if he can do the same to us? We need answers, Ethan replied. He turned to the rest of the team. We're sending a rover. Stepping into the unknown. The rover was small but durable, built for exploring harsh environments. Unlike the drone, it had no wireless signals to hack. It was fully manual, controlled through a physical tether. The team carefully guided it through the portal. The wheels rolled onto the sleek pavement of the parallel city. People walked past, barely glancing at it. They didn't seem surprised to see an unfamiliar machine, almost as if they had been expecting it. Then, footsteps. A group of uniformed individuals approached. The leader was the man who looked like Ethan. He crouched down, observing the rover closely. Then, he reached out and touched it. The screen flickered. The controls locked. Anna cursed. Are you kidding me? He disabled it too. No, Ethan whispered. He's sending something back. A message from the other side. The screen went black for a second. Then, words appeared. Cone 3G. We need to take. The room went still. Everyone stared at the message. Ethan felt a shiver run down his spine. The man on the other side, his double, was inviting them in. Ethan. Anna's voice was uncertain. This could be a trap. Or it could be the greatest discovery in human history, Ethan countered. A long pause. Then Ethan made his decision. I'm going through. The first step. The lab team quickly equipped him with a safety suit, cameras, and a tether that would keep him connected to their side. If anything went wrong, they could pull him back instantly. Ethan stood before the portal, heart pounding. One deep breath. Then he stepped forward and crossed into the unknown. A world too familiar. As Dr. Ethan Carter stepped through the portal, the air around him felt strangely heavy, not physically, but as if he had just crossed into something that wasn't meant to be touched. He blinked rapidly, adjusting to the bright city lights ahead. The smell of the air was eerily familiar, fresh, clean, but mixed with an unknown metallic tang. The streets were wide, smooth, and the towering buildings around him had a sleek, futuristic look. People walked by, seemingly unbothered by the sudden arrival of a stranger. Then he saw them. A group of uniformed individuals stood in a line, watching him with interest. The one at the front, the man who looked exactly like him, stepped forward. Dr. Ethan Carter, the other Ethan said, his voice calm but filled with authority. Welcome to our Earth. Ethan swallowed hard. This wasn't just another world. It was another version of his own. Meeting himself, the other Ethan extended a hand, a smirk on his face. You must have questions. Ethan hesitated, then shook his counterpart's hand. The feeling was too real, too human. This wasn't an illusion. How? Ethan started, his voice slightly unsteady. How is this possible? The alternate Ethan turned, gesturing for him to follow. It's a long story. Walk with me. Ethan glanced back at the portal. It was still there, shimmering softly. Anna and the team were watching from the other side, ready to pull him back if needed. He turned back and followed. A different yet similar world. As they walked, Ethan noticed small but unsettling differences. The sky was a slightly deeper shade of blue. The people walked with purpose, each wearing a small wrist device that seemed to function as a communicator, wallet, and data assistant all in one. The roads had no traffic lights, yet vehicles moved in perfect harmony, stopping and starting with unseen precision. Most unsettling of all, there were posters. Ethan stopped in his tracks. Plastered on the sides of buildings were large digital billboards, showing images of the other Ethan Carter. His face, his name, his work. Ethan turned to his counterpart. What is this? The other Ethan smirked. We've been expecting you. A chilling truth. Ethan's stomach twisted. You knew about us. Of course. The alternate Ethan gave a small shrug. We discovered the portal first. Ethan's eyes widened. You mean, you've been watching us? For years. A cold chill ran down Ethan's spine. His entire reality had been under observation, without anyone knowing. How is that possible? Ethan asked, forcing himself to stay calm. The other Ethan turned and pressed a button on his wrist device. A holographic screen appeared, displaying an image of a black void surrounded by energy waves. We call it the dimensional breach. We found it decades ago. At first, it was small, unstable, but over time it grew. And through it, we saw you. Ethan felt his pulse quicken. You mean your world has been monitoring ours? For how long? The alternate Ethan's face turned serious. Since before you even knew we existed. Ethan took a deep breath. The implications were massive. If this world had been observing them, what else had they done? And more importantly, why now? Why reveal themselves now? Before he could ask, the other Ethan's expression darkened. There's something you need to know, he said. Your world is in danger. And you don't even realize it yet. The unnerving welcome. Dr. Ethan Carter felt like his entire reality had just shifted. His world was being watched. For years, this alternate Earth had observed everything. His people, his technology, his entire existence, without anyone on his side ever knowing. And now, the other Ethan Carter was telling him that his world was in danger. Ethan took a slow, steady breath. What kind of danger are we talking about? The alternate Ethan didn't answer immediately. Instead, he turned and gestured toward a massive towering building nearby. You'll understand soon, he said. Follow me. Ethan hesitated. Everything in his instincts told him not to trust a version of himself who had been spying on his world. But he also knew he couldn't walk away. Not yet. So he followed. Inside the unknown headquarters. As they entered the massive structure, Ethan noticed how advanced everything was. The walls were smooth, metallic, yet seemed to glow with an inner light. There were no visible screens, yet information flickered across the walls whenever someone walked past. A few people turned to glance at Ethan, their eyes filled with curiosity. They all seemed to recognize him, but no one spoke. Then, a woman in a sleek silver uniform stepped forward. She had sharp features, piercing blue eyes, and a confident stance. Dr. Carter, she said, addressing the alternate Ethan before turning her gaze to the real Ethan. And Dr. Carter. Ethan exhaled. This is getting confusing. The alternate Ethan smirked. You'll get used to it. The woman extended her hand. I'm Commander Helena Rains. Welcome to the Interdimensional Observation Division. Ethan shook her hand, his mind still trying to process everything. Observation Division, he asked. That's an interesting name. Helena nodded. Our job is to monitor dimensional activity, specifically the portals that appear between parallel Earths. Ethan frowned. So you knew this portal would open? No. Her expression darkened. We knew it was coming, but not when. And now that it's here, we have a much bigger problem. The terrifying revelation. The alternate Ethan pressed his wrist device, and a massive holographic display appeared in the air. The image showed a swirling black mass, a storm of energy unlike anything Ethan had ever seen. This, the alternate Ethan said, is what's coming for your world. Ethan stared at the image. What is it? A dimensional collapse, Helena answered. A rift in space-time, so powerful it will consume anything in its path. Ethan felt a chill run down his spine. And you're saying, this is heading for my Earth? Helena nodded grimly. Yes. Your world is on a collision course with something it won't survive. Ethan's mind spun. If you knew this, why didn't you warn us sooner? We tried. The alternate Ethan said. We spent years searching for a stable connection between our worlds, but the portals don't just open on command. They appear randomly. This was the first time we could actually make contact. Ethan looked back at the swirling black mass on the display. It pulsed like a living thing, growing larger with every second. How much time do we have? He asked. The room fell silent. Then Helena spoke. 3 days. Ethan's breath caught. 3 days before his entire world was destroyed. A desperate choice. Ethan turned back to his counterpart. There has to be a way to stop it. There is, the alternate Ethan said, but it's risky. Helena crossed her arms. We need to stabilize the rift before it reaches critical mass. If we don't, your world will be wiped out, and the shockwave might even reach ours. Ethan clenched his fists. Then what do we do? The alternate Ethan gave him a serious look. We fight back. The terrifying revelation. Dr. Ethan Carter felt his chest tighten. 3 days. That was all the time his Earth had left. The swirling black mass on the holographic display seemed to pulse, as if it were alive. A dimensional collapse. He didn't fully understand it yet, but he knew one thing. If they didn't act fast, his world would be erased. Ethan turned sharply to his alternate self. You said we can fight back. How? The other Ethan exhaled, glancing at Commander Helena Rains. She nodded. We've been preparing for this, Helena said, bringing up another image. A sleek, massive device stationed inside what looked like a high-tech facility. This is the dimensional stabilizer. It was designed to anchor space-time and stop a collapse before it spreads. Ethan studied the hologram. The device was enormous, glowing with pulsating blue energy coils. It looked like a mix between a nuclear reactor and an advanced particle accelerator. But there's a problem, Helena continued. It was built for our world's energy frequency. To stop the collapse from consuming your Earth, we need to adjust it for your dimension's stability. And for that, we need someone from your world to help us. Ethan frowned. Someone like me. The alternate Ethan smirked. Exactly. The risk of the mission. Ethan felt the weight of the situation pressing down on him. His world was in danger, and the only hope was a machine built in another reality. All right, he said. Then let's do it. What's the catch? Helena's expression darkened. The portal isn't stable. If we send you back now, it might close before we can activate the stabilizer. That means we need to work from this side. And that also means your team back on Earth won't be able to help you. Ethan clenched his fists. So I have to trust that this machine will work, and that I'll be able to get back before it's too late. The alternate Ethan nodded. That's the risk. Ethan took a deep breath. He didn't like it. But what other choice did he have? How do we start? He asked. A race against time. Helena tapped her wrist device, and the holographic room shifted. They were now looking at the actual facility where the dimensional stabilizer was housed, a high-security research center deep underground. Come with us, she said. We'll take you there now. Ethan followed them out of the headquarters and into a sleek, hovering transport vehicle. It had no wheels, no visible thrusters, yet it moved silently and effortlessly through the city. As they traveled, Ethan stared out the window at this alternate version of Earth. The streets were clean. The sky was different. The technology far beyond what his world had. And yet, something felt off. Ethan turned to his counterpart. If you've been watching us for so long, why haven't you tried to contact us before? Why wait until now? The alternate Ethan didn't answer immediately. He glanced at Helena, who sighed before replying. Because we weren't sure if we should. Ethan narrowed his eyes. What does that mean? The alternate Ethan leaned forward. It means there are other versions of Earth out there, and not all of them are friendly. Ethan felt a chill run down his spine. Are you saying there are more parallel Earths? Helena nodded. Yes, some of them have already been consumed by the collapse. Ethan's heart pounded. This was bigger than he had imagined. His Earth wasn't just in danger. It was part of something much larger, something that had already claimed other worlds. We don't have much time, Helena said as their vehicle approached a massive underground facility. If we don't stop the collapse now, your world won't be the last one to fall. The transport landed smoothly. The doors hissed open. Ethan stepped out, and for the first time, he saw the machine that could save his world. Or, if they failed, it could be the last thing he ever saw. The race against time, the race against time. Dr. Ethan Carter stepped into the underground facility, his pulse pounding in his ears. The dimensional stabilizer stood before him, a towering structure of glowing energy coils and humming machinery. This machine was his world's only hope. Helena Rains and his alternate self walked beside him as technicians moved quickly around the room, adjusting settings and running final checks. Dr. Ethan Carter stepped into the underground facility, his pulse pounding in his ears. The dimensional stabilizer stood before him, a towering structure of glowing energy coils and humming machinery. This machine was his world's only hope. Helena Rains and his alternate self walked beside him as technicians moved quickly around the room, adjusting settings and running final checks. We don't have time to test it, Helena said. If we don't act now, the collapse will reach your world before we're ready. Ethan ran a hand through his hair. Then let's make it ready. He stepped toward the main control panel. The layout was different from anything he had seen before, but science was still science. He quickly scanned the readings, noting the unstable energy surges in the system. It's not synchronized with my world's energy signature, Ethan said. If we activate it now, it won't just fail, it could make the collapse worse. The alternate Ethan nodded. That's why you're here. You're the only one who understands your Earth's frequency enough to adjust it. Ethan exhaled, rolling up his sleeves. We don't have time to test it, Helena said. If we don't act now, the collapse will reach your world before we're ready. Ethan ran a hand through his hair. Then let's make it ready. He stepped toward the main control panel. The layout was different from anything he had seen before, but science was still science. He quickly scanned the readings, noting the unstable energy surges in the system. It's not synchronized with my world's energy signature, Ethan said. If we activate it now, it won't just fail, it could make the collapse worse. The alternate Ethan nodded. That's why you're here. You're the only one who understands your Earth's frequency enough to adjust it. Ethan exhaled, rolling up his sleeves. Time was running out. An unexpected sabotage. Ethan worked fast, rewriting the system's energy calculations, recalibrating the stabilizer to lock onto his Earth's specific wavelength. Minutes passed. Then, alarms blared. Helena's head snapped toward the security monitors. Red warning signals flashed across the screens. What's happening? Ethan asked, looking up from the console. Helena's face hardened. We've been breached. The alternate Ethan's expression darkened. They found us. Ethan's stomach dropped. Who? Before anyone could answer, a massive explosion rocked the facility. The walls shook, sparks rained down, and emergency lights flickered on. Helena grabbed a communicator. Security. Report. A voice crackled through. Unknown forces have infiltrated the facility. They're targeting the stabilizer. Ethan's blood ran cold. Someone wanted the collapse to happen. Who are they? He demanded. Helena's jaw clenched. Not all parallel Earths are friendly. Some want domination. If your world is destroyed, they take its place. Ethan's fists clenched. And now they're here. The fight for survival. Gunfire erupted in the hallway. Ethan ducked as armored figures in black tactical gear stormed into the facility. They moved with deadly precision, their weapons glowing with energy pulses. "Take cover," Helena shouted, drawing her own weapon. Security forces engaged the intruders in a fierce battle, but the enemy was well prepared. Ethan watched in horror as two scientists were hit by stun blasts, collapsing instantly. Then, one of the intruders moved toward the stabilizer. Ethan's eyes widened. If they destroyed it, his world was doomed. Without thinking, he lunged forward, grabbing a wrench from a nearby workbench. As the attacker reached for the control panel, Ethan swung hard. The blow connected. The intruder staggered, but before Ethan could react, the enemy spun and aimed a weapon at him. A gunshot rang out. The attacker collapsed, shot by the alternate Ethan. Ethan looked at his counterpart, breathing hard. The other Ethan smirked. "I couldn't let you die. I still need you to save your world." Helena's voice interrupted. "They're retreating." Ethan turned to see the surviving attackers pulling back. One of them shouted, "It's too late. You can't stop it." Then they vanished through a portal of their own. The final countdown. Ethan's hands trembled as he turned back to the stabilizer. The attack had damaged some of the components, but it was still functional. "We don't have time to fix everything," he said. "But if I manually override the system, I can force it to work." Helena frowned. "That's dangerous. Everything about this is dangerous." The alternate Ethan nodded. "Then let's finish this." Ethan's fingers flew across the controls. He overrode the damaged sequences, compensating for the missing components. The stabilizer hummed to life, its core glowing brighter and brighter. "Energy levels are stabilizing," Helena called out. "It's working." Ethan didn't stop. He adjusted the final frequency, locking onto his world. A deep rumbling sound filled the facility. The stabilizer's energy pulsed, sending a shockwave through the portal. Ethan looked up at the monitors. The collapse was slowing. It was working. But then, the stabilizer's power levels spiked dangerously. Helena's eyes widened. "It's overloading." Ethan had one last choice. He had to manually shut it down before it destroyed both worlds. Taking a deep breath, he reached for the final switch and pulled it. A blinding light, a massive burst of energy erupted from the stabilizer, flooding the room with white light. Ethan felt himself being pulled backward, his body weightless. And then, silence. Ethan's eyes fluttered open. He was lying on the ground. The stabilizer was silent. The alarms had stopped. He pushed himself up, heart pounding. Did it work? The alternate Ethan checked the monitors. Then, slowly, he grinned. "Your world is safe." Ethan exhaled in relief, his legs nearly giving out. They had done it. The collapse was stopped. But in the back of his mind, one question remained. Who were the attackers? And more importantly, would they try again? Humanity's ultimate stand. Dr. Ethan Carter stood in the aftermath of the battle, his breath still heavy. The dimensional stabilizer was silent now, its once blazing energy core dimmed. His hands trembled. Had they really done it? Helena Raines checked the monitors, her fingers moving quickly over the controls. Her face remained tense. Ethan's alternate self stood nearby, watching the readings just as carefully. Then, the screen flashed green. Helena exhaled. It worked. Ethan's heart pounded. "You're sure?" She nodded. "The collapse has been neutralized. Your Earth is safe." For the first time since this nightmare began, Ethan felt the weight in his chest ease. They had won. A new enemy revealed. But as the relief washed over him, a darker thought loomed in his mind. The attackers. Ethan turned to the alternate version of himself. Who were they? The other Ethan's smirk was gone. His expression was grim. "Not everyone believes in saving worlds, Ethan." Helena crossed her arms. "Some want to control them." Ethan clenched his fists. You mean, they wanted my world to be destroyed? Helena nodded. Yes, some parallel Earths have already fallen to the collapse. Not by accident, but by force. There are civilizations that use the collapse as a weapon. They wipe out weaker versions of Earth, and then take their place. Ethan felt his stomach twist. And you're saying, my Earth was next. The alternate Ethan gave a slow nod. It still might be. The warning. Helena pulled up a holographic projection. It showed a list of parallel Earths, some marked as active, others marked as destroyed. Ethan's eyes narrowed. How many are gone? Helena's face was cold. Too many. Ethan swallowed hard. His Earth had survived today, but this wasn't over. The attackers had failed, this time. But they were still out there, watching, waiting. The alternate Ethan turned to him. You should go home, Ethan. But know this, your world is no longer hidden. They know about you now. Ethan exhaled sharply. His life had changed forever. His Earth was safe. For now. Returning home. The portal shimmered before him, the final passage back to his own world. Ethan turned to Helena and his counterpart. Thank you. I won't forget this. The alternate Ethan smirked. I don't think you'll have the chance to. Ethan stepped forward. The portal's energy wrapped around him, pulling him through. And then, he was back in his own world. Anna Patul rushed toward him. Ethan. He steadied himself. The lab was just as he had left it, but now he was different. The portal flickered once, then vanished. It was over. For now. The final thought. As Ethan looked around at his world, safe and untouched, a single thought echoed in his mind. If the enemy had tried to destroy his world once, they would try again. And next time, he would be ready.